Hello and welcome to the Catch a Lift Coaches Corner. I'm CAL coach and program director Melissa, and this week I'm honored to introduce the replay of episode 57 of the Coaches Corner, featuring U.S. Army veteran Samantha Love. We thank Sam for sharing her story and light with us all. We thank ID Technologies for their support of this Coaches Corner podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the Coaches Corner podcast. Now, let's sit back and hear from Sam.
Sam, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for taking the time with us. We're so excited to talk with you about all things Samantha Love. So let's hit right into it. Sam, would you talk to us a little bit about your life growing up and ultimately what would lead you to the Army?
Yeah, so I grew up in Seattle, Washington, and I'm a sixth-generation Army vet, so I grew up there.
Wow. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should say military vet, not Army vet.
Okay, yeah.
Sixth-generation veteran, and just kind of all I ever knew, and being a little girl, it was something that I was discouraged from doing. It was not the path that I think anyone in my family really wanted me to take, and therefore I had to take it, right? It was that I saw it as a challenge that I wanted to do. But I had a really good life growing up, and as soon as I turned 17, I enlisted the minute I could, and from there joined the Army and set off for basic training.
That's terrific. What did it mean for you, once you had graduated basic, like you said, you had this strong family history of, generations of veterans, and, you were kind of discouraged from it, but you went and did it, graduated basic. What did that feel like for you?
It felt really good.
Yeah.
I was the first female in my family to join.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so for me, it just felt like I was doing something that as a little girl, I told myself I would do. And every time I brought it up as a kid, other options were presented to me, right? I could be a lawyer because I'm so good at arguing. I could be an athlete. I could be anything I wanted to be, but please, for the love of God, don't join the military, right? Other people had done it so that I wouldn't have to.
Right.
But that wasn't my mentality. So it felt really good to graduate and kind of, show everyone that I could do it too.
Heck yeah, that's awesome. Oh my gosh, I love that story. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Would you talk to us about what did you go in as for your military occupational specialty?
So the funny thing is when I went into the recruiting station, I had intended to enlist to be a firefighter. I don't know why, it just sounded really badass to me. And as a 17-year-old, I was like, I could be fires,
Yeah.
And my scores were pretty decent on the ASVAB, and so the recruiters presented me with other job options as well to consider. And they said that I could go to interrogation school. And I remember thinking, because I'm 17, be an interrogator, like you're gonna pay me to go do that. Okay, let's do this. It just sounded so ridiculous and wonderful and badass that I took them up on their offer. And this was in a time when, numbers were really needed. People were needed. And so the signing bonuses were a lot.
Right.
17-year-old that wasn't going to be able to afford college, that was, really didn't have a chance. This was sort of the perfect way to start a new life.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, I can't imagine that right as 17, like being presented that option and being like, oh, like I feel like I would almost react the same way. Like, I can do that. I can go be an interrogator. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was interrogation school like, Sam? What did it entail?
I hated it. I'm not going to lie. It was hard. I don't even remember how long it is. It's a long time. I want to say it was like 16 or 20 weeks. I could definitely be wrong though. But it's just really intense. You're starting out from the basics of learning about the history of interrogation. You're learning about when it's needed, when it's not, what people have done to mess it up for current interrogators, what not to do, right? Like these are the poster children of absolutely don't do this. This is what we want to be good people and kind. So it's just like it's intense. And then you start practicing and you start mock interrogations and all these other things. And so it's just a lot of really intense studying, and everyone that's in interrogation school, like you're in it together. And so you're all surviving, you're all trying to graduate. There is a high attrition rate. And so people would get rolled back often, meaning they'd have to start over, or they would be a no-go. It's like, it's meant for you. This is not your line of work. We're sorry. They would be given a new job. And so to see your friends drop like flies all around you, and to wonder like, when is it going to be me? When am I going to get rolled back? When are they going to tell me that they really shouldn't have given me this job? So it's very stressful, and it's hot because it's in Arizona.
Wow. So just to circle back a minute, when you guys would practice the interrogations, when you got to that point, was it like amongst each other, your classmates, or did you have people that were trained that were sitting in front of you?
Oh no, there are trained professionals that come in with a whole history of of a role.
Yeah.
And then that's how you learn, that's how you practice. And you literally start from nothing, and then hope that you can be nice enough to them and kind enough, and build a rapport with them that you can find out what you need to know. But it's always up in the air depending on personality, and they didn't make it easy.
Oh my gosh, I'm sure they didn't. So as we know, this is post 9/11 time frame. Was it on your mind as you're going through school, like, I'm going to be doing this in Iraq or Afghanistan, or wasn't that really kind of in the forefront for you?
No, it was always on our mind. Like, there was a wall in interrogation school honoring those that had gone through interrogation school that had recently killed. We would be getting word of people in our units because most of us had assigned units already. Or we would find out during interrogation school, we would find out that someone at a unit had been killed overseas. And so it was all around us. And the intelligence community is so small. Yeah. And you hear that about all communities, but intelligence it's in the military is so small. Everyone knows everyone in some friends of friends. And so, we all knew what was coming. Anyone that would say like, I'm not going to deploy, or, the recruiter promised me I wasn't deploying, we would, like, sorry, you're going to deploy. And if you think you're not, you should go into a different job.
Right.
Because we're not allowed to interrogate U.S. personnel. I'm useless on U.S. soil.
Yeah.
And so literally I am being trained to not be in the country.
Wow. That's absolutely incredible. So Sam, you have a very unique tie to the Catch a Lift Fund. You had the great honor, I'm sure you would call it, to serve with Christopher Coughlin. And I believe you two also went to interrogation school together. Would you talk to us about Chris and, that time in your military service with him?
Chris was one of the brightest lights in interrogation school for me. I met Chris when I arrived in Arizona off my airplane. We all got loaded onto a bus to drive off to interrogation school. And Chris was on my bus. He was sitting right across from me, and he was asleep. And Chris was one of the older guys, right? So, there's so many 18-year-olds that look like they have no idea what the hell they've done. Like, they miss home, they regret their decision, shaking in their boots.
Yeah.
And Chris is asleep next to me on the bus. Like now is the time to rest. And that was my first introduction to him. He was sure of himself. He knew what needed to get done, and he did it. So everyone else is freaking out, and he always knew, no, I'm right now. I don't need to be stressed. And then it just kind of went from there. We had an instant friendship. he was just the jokester. I was really stressed out in interrogation school. I was away from home for the first time. I was 18. I was going through like, my first love drama, and I just didn't want to be there. And he always had a joke for me. He always he was always getting me in trouble in like a funny way, so we would always end up getting smoked together. But he was always distracting me in the best ways. And he was just my greatest memory there.
That's absolutely wonderful. Wow. Thank you for sharing with us about Chris. We love hearing about him so much and the different stories about him. I was thinking this morning, and I told my husband, I've had the great honor now, if I counted right, of getting to interview 4 different people that have served with Chris. And it's just remarkable listening to the stories. So thank you.
My greatest memory with him is we were standing in formation and I was on my phone, which I should not have been. Like I was like, and this is a long time ago. So phones were big and ugly and very noticeable, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like trying to send something and he's like giving me shit right next to me, like, dude. And I was like, just like, leave me alone. Let me send this. And then I hear a drill sergeant say something about how I'm on my phone. And he was like, the drill sergeant, do you want to get smoked? And Chris says, let's get smoked. And I look at him and I was like, fuck, man. Sorry if I'm swearing. And I was like, fuck, I know what's going to happen. And he was like, yeah, she's on her phone. I was like, here we go. And so both of us, because he was in on it, both of us got dragged to the front of formation. We had to take off our Kevlar helmets and we had to do one-arm push-ups like off of the Kevlar helmets off until we were begging for mercy in the Arizona heat. And we were laughing hysterically the whole time, which made the drill sergeant scream at us more.
Oh, yeah.
And I couldn't stop laughing. And that's like my lifetime memory of Chris is that let's we all need fitness. Like let's get smoked. Let's do this, man. And like to this day, I'm like, I was so mad at him in that moment, but I was laughing hysterically and it was a forever memory. I will never forget that. And so that's just Chris. Let's get smoked. Like, let's fucking do this.
Oh my gosh. That is terrific. I love it.
Yeah.
Oh man. Sam, would you talk to us a bit about your Afghanistan deployment and what that was like for you?
Yeah. So I actually, I had a weird role when I deployed. I went over as a contractor, but I was also still in the reserves. And so I did reserve drill time over there. So whether you call it I served overseas or I deployed, it's sort of a mixed bag because I was in both capacities over there.
Right.
But I went on a contract as an interrogator. So I also learned Persian Farsi when I was in the Army. And so that was very useful for me when I was over there. So my job was to conduct interrogations. And while I was in Afghanistan, that was when there was just a lot of conflict, and we were having soldiers that would get shot on base by friendly forces, and so we were doing a lot of interrogations of our own and a lot of interrogations of people that we worked with. And I was on a mobile team, and so anytime there was something to be investigated, we were on a helicopter and we would fly to the site, we would do our investigation, and then when we were done, we would leave. And I really loved that aspect because it felt like closure every time I finished something.
Wow, I would imagine that has to be like a great way to kind of look back at it, the fact that you were able to get closure at these different points.
Yeah. And going after Chris, I was convinced I wasn't going to come home. I felt like it was my turn, right? And knowing that Chris didn't make it back, it kind of gave me a push. I wrote letters to all my family, like unless I die. I had all my plans laid out. But I mean, I went there truly, fully expecting not to come back. And I mean, I don't know how now when I think about it, but I was okay with it then. Like I was very accepting of that. And looking back, I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
that sucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it like for you, Sam, coming home? Like you just told us, when you were in Afghanistan, you fully expected not to make it home. So you did. You came back to U.S. soil. Talk to us about that transition from that environment.
I was a mess. I will say that I've heard it's improved, but at the time, the transition process was not great when you came home. And so, like, literally, 1 minute I'm in Afghanistan, 48 hours later, I'm in my mom's apartment, and like, it's just weird. I would be driving down the freeway, and I remember seeing the drive home from the airport. I remember seeing litter on the side of the freeway, and like,
Yeah.
freaked out. And I was like, oh shit, I might be messed up. And it didn't occur to me until that point that
Right.
like I obviously know about PTSD. I was very aware of it, but in that moment I was like, oh, it's me. Like, so it sucked. I drank too much. I couldn't maintain healthy relationships because I didn't have a desire to. It was just a weird, hard process to figure out, like, what is my new life? What is my new normal? And having been a reservist, I didn't like get to go back to doing what I wanted to do, active duty type stuff. It was like, okay, now I have to get a job and I have to interact with people that have no idea what I've been through. And they probably think I'm just like a rude, weird person when in reality, trying to function on a daily basis. And so, I mean, it sucked. It was awful. I got through it with a lot of really great support, and I'm thankful, but, being 10 years detached from that, it's easy to see how coming home can be like the start of some really awful stuff for a lot of soldiers.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And so I wasn't a reservist myself, but I was National Guard. So very similar, obviously. And the transition home, the same type of thing. I think the biggest shock in the whole thing for me, like I was a HET driver. So I did convoys my entire tour in Iraq. And so going from that very high speed environment, very amped up all the time, coming home, going back to just a drilling status one weekend a month, and literally being away now from my unit and everybody, that was extremely hard to deal with, and something they never talked to us about, and it definitely was not something I was prepared for.
Silence. I couldn't handle silence for the longest time because I was under an air pad, and I slept on an airfield. And so I remember at one point I downloaded an app because this was iPhones were like coming out. I downloaded an app with airplane noise, and I felt crazy, but I slept like a baby that night. And it like you're not prepared, right? And you're not necessarily stoked about the new person that you are.
Yeah.
But like those are the cards you're dealt, and then you have to.
So sitting here, Sam, about 10 years removed from coming home, if you could give, a message, to civilians or the general population about a soldier transitioning, would you have anything to say about it?
I would say, especially now, just give them some grace. I mean, politics always suck.
Yeah.
The world's always fighting. But it's hard because I feel like when I identify as a veteran, people automatically assume they know everything about my political beliefs, or they know everything about what I've been through, or they know why I feel the way I do about certain things. And that's hard because when I was coming home from my deployment, I was also, PTSD. I had a lot of imposter syndrome. I just didn't feel good enough for anything, any area of life. And then to have people that would meet me new and find out I deployed, and they'd want to talk about presidents or about why the war exists. And I would be like,
Ugh,
Like,
yeah.
this sucks because number one, I could agree with everything that person says. Who knows? But I was not in a place to discuss that. And it also to be boxed into left, right, middle,
Yeah.
it destroyed me because some stuff overseas really sucks, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want people thinking that I support any of
Right.
that stuff. But at the same time, I'm very proud of the stuff I
Yes.
did. I'm very proud of Chris. I am very proud of people. And so when I came home, I just wanted a little more grace.
Yeah.
I felt like anytime someone new met me, they wanted to have that political discussion, and they'd be like, "Oh, so let's get into this." And in my mind, it's like, please put me in a dark corner. I don't want to talk about this right now. And even now, people are pretty good where they'll ask me about my deployment, and I'm very receptive. I'll answer questions. I don't want to be interrogated, right? And so it's really just all about how you go about it and the grace that you show the person that you're having a conversation with.
No, that's absolutely perfect. That's everything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel just tremendously worse for like the Vietnam vets. And, I feel like every deployment maybe gets a little easier for certain, for military, who knows, but I just, my heart aches for people that have been through so much shit and then they're called a bad person, or or people say like, you're a murderer, and they could have literally been on a base the whole time and not murdered someone. And so it sucks. And I feel for everyone that's been through it, because no matter what their beliefs are, I ache for them.
Yeah. Sam, so you would have some other difficult stuff happen fairly soon after coming home. Would you talk to us about what would ultimately lead to your retirement?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis while I was in the Army. And the paperwork had been started when I deployed. So I knew prior to my deployment that it was going to be the beginning of the end. And so that's why I went over as a contractor, because my unit wasn't up for deployment. And I felt like that was, I needed to fulfill my mission, and my mission and my training said to deploy. And so I took matters into my own hands, and I did that. So when they had diagnosed me with multiple sclerosis in the Army at the time, and it could still be the case, it's an automatic medical board. Okay. And a lot of people in the Army, if something comes up and they need to get out, that's fine. The Army will take care of it, and it's not a big deal. It was not fine for me. And so I, as much as I could, I appealed twice their ruling based on my physical fitness abilities, based, my lack of symptoms. Like, yes, I had multiple sclerosis. Yes, it was identified, but I was fine.
Right.
And so I appealed it as much as I could. I took it to the highest ranks I possibly could. And they were very gracious, and they retired me. But it was awful, because I had planned on for life. And so 4 years, like when people ask me how long I was in and I say 4 years, it destroys me every time I say it, because that was not, it wasn't a contract and then I got out. I was out then. And so, it happened really fast. It was very unexpected. I was extremely bitter for a really long time about it. But I've really accepted that it enabled me to do a lot of other good stuff. But I wasn't stoked about it.
Yeah. Sam, first of all, truly thank you so much for your service to our great country, and just for being a terrific American. Like you said, you had already had the diagnosis, you knew when you deployed, but, coming back once, you were retired and everything, how did you decide that you wanted to continue in a position of service and become a special education teacher?
So I'll be honest, I spent my first 2 weeks home very inebriated. Just like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had no coping skills, right?
Yeah.
And so
I get that.
2 weeks in, my mom, I was staying with my mom. My mom came in the room and she was like, "Okay, you're done. Like, time's up. I gave you a good
Yep.
solid 2 weeks to have your pity party. You're not in the army. You have MS. Life sucks. Like, now what?" And that was what I needed. And she reminded me that I've always had a soft spot for those with special needs and for serving others. I mean, my purpose is to serve in life. If I'm not helping somebody, I don't feel adequate. So she told me to try being like a counselor for a summer camp for kids with autism, and she knew a friend that was running it. And so I started working at that summer camp, and I realized that I adored children with autism. I adored children with special needs. And I have no patience in any aspect of my life except for, with these kids.
Yeah.
And so that spurred me to get my master's degree in education with an endorsement in special education. And so I'm a certified teacher. I can teach any grade, K through 8, but I'm also able to teach kids with special needs, K through 12.
It's absolutely terrific, Sam. Thank you. So I want to transition here a little bit and kind of talk about some fitness related stuff. Like I said at the beginning, you have, a very special connection to Catch a Lift, obviously, for reason number one. You went to school with Chris, interrogation school and everything. You knew him well, but also you were the reason we have the Coughlin WAD. Like, holy cow,
that's crazy to say over here.
I mean, it is though. And I could say a lot about it, and we'll get into some of that other stuff, what the Coughlin, WAD is and does, but how did this come about? How did this even come into your mind as something you wanted to do or pursue?
So Chris's death did a number on me. He was killed on my birthday. And so every year on my birthday, I didn't celebrate it. It was just like,
right.
It was awful. And I was close to him. And so it sucked because it wasn't just like a friend of a friend, which is still, but like, it really hit me to my core every year. And I thought about him all the time. And a couple years after having my son, I started doing CrossFit. I drank the Kool-Aid. I went one day and was like, I'm doing it once and never again. And then, had a year membership very shortly after. And so I started getting really into CrossFit. I was stoked about what it was doing for my mental health, about what it was doing for my physical health, improving all aspects of my life. It was the closest thing I had ever found to military style PT, with the camaraderie, with just like the pushing yourself to your absolute limits.
Yeah.
I was so thrilled to be in an environment like that after so long. And I think, within a few months I did Murph, and that's when I learned about Hero WADs. And I was down the rabbit hole one night, and I saw that you could submit a request on CrossFit headquarters website to have a Hero WAD made in honor of someone that died in service. And so I saw it, and Lynn Coughlin and I had spoken periodically since Chris's death. And so I shot Lynn a message and I said, hey, you can say no. You can say I'm like way out of my bounds, but I want to recommend him for a Hero WAD. I'll do all the work, but do I have your permission? Like, is this something that you would want?
Right.
And she was like, hell yeah, go for it. So she was like, full speed ahead, do anything you need and I will support you. And so I was like, cool. It's probably not going to happen, but cool. So I submitted his info, and a few months later, headquarters emailed me back, and they wanted all sorts of stuff. They wanted like proof that he did CrossFit, proof that he worked out, like all this stuff. And Chris wasn't big on social media. This was before Instagram. And so coming up with proof that Chris was as athletic as we thought was pretty hard at the headquarters, but we did it. Lynn sent me like a notebook of all the workouts he would program in his little notebook. It was such a beautiful time for her and I. So we proved it to headquarters, and they wrote me back and they said, we want to release the WOD on the anniversary of his death. I broke down because they didn't know that that's my birthday, right?
Yeah.
They don't know that that's the day that I can't exist. And so I was like, oh my God, this could be so healing. Which is selfish, like healing for me. But I was just excited to find a way to celebrate him instead of mourn him.
Yeah.
And so about a week before they announced it, I sent them an email and I'm like, so what's the workout? Like, let's talk about this. Can we do, death by burpees? Something that I would do. And they said that they weren't going to tell me, and that they would let me know, I think the night before the release, but that I wouldn't say in the workout. So when people ask me and they're like, what the hell were you thinking? I'm like, I wasn't thinking. It was all headquarters. I don't know how they came up with that workout, but also Chris would have freaking loved that because it's so awful. It's so miserable. He would have loved it. And so it ended up working out so very well. And they announced it on the anniversary of his death. My CrossFit gym did it in honor of him that first year. And my CrossFit gym has done it every year since then, on the anniversary. And so everyone I know in my community knows about Chris. Everyone I know in my community supports me on that day and supports him and Catch a Lift on that day. And so it's just sort of a beautiful new way to honor him. And every year I'm like so angry doing that workout because it is really awful. And I always do it in a vest. And every year I'm like, this is what he would want. He would want me suffering and like thinking
for sure
him, and he would be laughing, loud cursing, and telling me to work harder. And so it's really like the best thing that could have happened, but I wasn't expecting it to be any of this.
Yeah. Sam, could you walk us through what the Coughlin WOD is?
Oh God. So I feel put on the spot.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
So because my gym modifies it to do a CrossFit class.
Okay.
So I think it's a 60-minute time cap. Is that right?
Yeah, I know there's a time cap. And so I'm assuming it's 60 minutes. There's a 6-minute cumulative hang from bar.
If you can edit out me butchering this.
Here, pull it up, Sam, and Henry will re-ask this question.
Sorry.
Cool. No, you're good.
I should know it off the top of my head. Just don't want to look like a...
No, you're good. Yeah, all good.
Thank you.
All good. Yep, I'll just re-ask the question, Henry.
God, seeing his photo on their page gets me every time.
Oh, I can't even imagine, seriously.
So on their website they don't have a time cap. So the Coughlin.
Or here, let me re-ask. Yeah, okay. I'll reset here.
No, I'm thankful for you.
Sam, would you walk us through what the Coughlin WOD is?
Yeah. So it is a hang from a pull-up bar for 6 minutes of time. And every time you drop from the bar, you have to run 800 meters and do 30 push-ups. So some people try to go all out and see how long they can hang for that first time. Other people will try to space it out. I always wear a weight vest, and I try to hang on for dear life as long as I can that first round, because once I let go, it's really ugly. But it's brutal.
It is so brutal, and I love it that you say that and confirm it, that Chris would love it just because of the so much suck factor of it. Because I've done the Coughlin WOD one time, the year that it debuted out, and it was suck from moment one till the very end. And that's what I found too. After, I went all out and tried to, hang as long as I could. And I remember dropping, and did the run and push-ups and whatnot, but then having to get back on the bar, it goes south quick there.
It goes, and then your grip goes to heck,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And I'm actually curious to see if Beyond the Whiteboard has like a record for Coughlin right now, because I feel like some people have probably done it in some crazy times.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've looked, but I have looked at that before, and people have, and it's just like, wow.
I mean, I remember one guy from my gym, he hung on for, I want to say it was like 4 minutes. And I was just blown
Yeah.
away. And then in my mind, every year after I do it, I'm like, okay, I'm going to work on my grip strength all year long. I'm going to hang from a bar for 1 minute a day. And next year, I'm going to do strength workout. And then life happens and it doesn't work out.
yeah.
But one of these years, I'm going to get it.
That's just terrific. And I mean, you've already kind of hit on it here, Sam, but, just to kind of get your thoughts on it again, how has it kind of helped you maybe kind of come full circle with everything with Chris and, even your time in the Army now that, you have this WOD that you get to do every year on your birthday?
It's been the most healing thing, and the most unexpected. I didn't expect to do CrossFit. I didn't expect to get into, now I'm into weightlifting. I just didn't expect to be in a place where I could be on a podcast talking about Chris. He was so amazing, and I'm sure other people have highlighted this on many other podcasts, but there's those people that you really talk up a lot after they die, but they weren't that great.
Right.
Chris, no, you talk him up when he was alive, because he was too good. He was too kind. He was too funny. He just didn't have a ceiling. There was nothing that said, I can only do this, or I can only do this. If he said I could help someone, or I can make the world a better place, or I can make this person laugh, he would do it. And he never cared about himself. And for other people to know his name, and for other people to be able to see his picture and to know that he was a real person.
Yeah.
And that he was really, really, really one of the good ones. It's just very healing, because when he died, I was so bitter, because a really good one was taken, like one of the best humans I ever knew, the kind of person that would have done anything for me or anyone. And it wasn't fair, and it sucked. And so, to be here, it feels nice. And I know it's what he would want. Every year when I was having my pity party on the anniversary of his death, I was very aware that it is not what he would have wanted. But I couldn't control, how I felt. But he would want this right here. And that feels really good.
I am so glad that, the Coughlin family has the SWAT in memory of him, that you have this to celebrate every year on your birthday, that it's here for all of us, because we all pull so much strength from him. I never knew Chris. I have the great honor of knowing Lynn, knowing the Coughlin family, and being a part of this great organization. And so hearing these reflections of him, it makes me feel, and I'm sure our listeners too, like they know him, so thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for sharing his light, not only yours, but his with us too. Sam, how has fitness changed your recovery?
Fitness has changed everything for me. When you have multiple sclerosis, they tell you you're going to be in a wheelchair, you're not going to be talking, your life's just going to be awful. And so far, that's not true for me. So I did CrossFit for a very long time. I recently made the switch to competitive weightlifting.
Nice.
And I'm in remission. I'm not on any medications. I was on 30 pills a day. They were recommending chemotherapy.
Oh my gosh.
And because they just say tackle it aggressively so that you aren't in a wheelchair at 50.
Right.
But that's also because people don't take care of themselves. And so I have a very solid diet. I have just an amazing fitness routine. And I listened to my body. And I'm not saying that, my MS isn't going to progress, because I think that would be naive. But so far, I've learned that the healthier I am on the outside, so far it's been stable. And I've never been more fit. Even when I was in the Army, I was definitely not this fit. I've never been able to lift heavier. I've never been able to run longer. And I feel awesome. And so honestly, I do forget that I have MS a lot. Like, I don't advertise it. It's not in my Instagram bio.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it'll come up and someone will be like, what? And it's like, oh, I definitely was not keeping it from you, but I forgot, and that's kind of cool. It's really nice
That is.
to really forget that I have it.
That's incredible.
And at 10 years ago, it was all I thought about all day long. And so because of fitness, because of CrossFit, because of weightlifting, because of activity and honestly camaraderie, I've been able to feel like I could go another 10 or 20 years before I have to have any serious convo with a neurologist. And that's incredible.
That's remarkable. I'm so very happy to hear that. And fitness for the win yet again, right? Fitness, nutrition, taking care of your body.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And sleep. Please, everyone,
sleep.
Yes.
We always need that reminder too.
Yeah.
So Sam, obviously for, a variety of reasons for all of us, setbacks come up in the gym, or even just our recovery in general. How do you stay in kind of a positive space and move through those times, going from a low valley kind of back up to a peak? How do you get through it?
I mean, my favorite word is adapt. And I just tell myself I can adapt. Everything is adaptable. Everything can be modified. And that's hard because I'm very competitive and I am a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to the standards I set for myself. And so if I have an injury or if I'm not feeling well, it can feel like the end of the world in the gym or the end of the world for my life.
Oh, yeah.
But everything is adaptable. So if my leg is injured, I work upper body. If I'm exhausted, I take a nap. So even if it's not in the plan, I adapt to still make it doable. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. And so I just adapt. I adapt the heck out of everything I do at any time. And then I still end up more ahead than if I would have just been like, oh, can't do it. This sucks.
Yep. Throw the bag in. Yep.
Yeah. And so I have a lot of veteran friends. I have adaptive athlete friends that have various injuries. And if I see someone with one arm lifting a barbell over their head, who the hell am I to say anything, And so I look at these athletes that truly adapt in big lifestyle ways, and I I can do anything. Like, they're doing it and they're happy and, and they're living their lives in a fulfilling way. There's no reason I have excuses.
Absolutely. It is like that though. It's like, just look around, look at our brothers and sisters and everything. And it's like the complaining and excuses end there. So I definitely understand that.
Yeah.
So Sam, what do you think, and you hit it, but I want to ask you directly it again, what do you think Chris would have to say about Catch a Lift Fund and this body of work that's been created in his memory and, the positive effect it has had on literally thousands and thousands and thousands of our great nation's combat wounded veterans?
I just think he would just be mind blown. I think he would say, wow. I think he'd be a little irritated that I named a workout after him, because it's just more attention on him that he wouldn't necessarily want. But then to know about everything that's come from this workout named after him, I think he would be blown away. I think he would be that guy trying to hang from the bar for 6 minutes. But for him to know that veterans have been saved in his memory, for him to know that veterans have had a better quality of life in his memory, I think he would be blown away and so grateful. And I mean, he would have some ridiculous smart ass joke for me about it. And I just wish I knew what it was, because I mean, it would be wonderful to hear. But I think he would be pretty stoked about it.
Sam, I have one last question I want to ask you here today. So again, knowing Chris, what does it mean to you to be Cal Strong?
Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, hit it.
He would just say, get it done, get shit done, fucking do it. So if you're catchable strong, you're fucking doing it. Like, you're doing the thing, you're showing up, and you're adapting.
Yeah.
But to Chris, you just fucking do it.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah.
Sam, thank you so very much again for your service to our great country. Thank you for continuing to give back to our country and your community in so many ways, you know. Thank you for sharing your reflections of Chris today. They mean a lot to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm always willing to talk about Chris to anyone that wants to talk about him, and I'm just so honored that 10 years later, 10 years after my deployment, has it been almost 12 years? 12 years, that we're still talking about him, that we're honoring him. It just feels good, because he was the kind of person that deserved. And so I'm just honored to be here, and I'm very grateful that you had me today.
The honor is all ours, Sam.
That's it for this week's episode of the Coach's Corner. We will return next Wednesday at 1 Eastern Time with another episode. Thank you to ID Technologies for their support of this Coach's Corner podcast. Thank you to Lynn Coughlin, Henry Pomper, and Kaylee Nasiri for all of the work you do to make this podcast possible week after week. And we thank the entire Catch a Lift team. Don't forget to join us every Wednesday live at 1 p.m. Eastern on YouTube for a chance to win Cal Swag and to chat with your brothers and sisters. Until next week, keep it real and stay Cal Strong.